When the United States, the European Union, and their allies hit Russia with sweeping aviation sanctions back in 2022, the goal went way beyond just stopping new aircraft sales. The real target was every single layer of Russia's civil aviation ecosystem. Welcome to Taranov's Geopolitics channel. In today's video, we are breaking down the massive economic war waged in the skies, examining how Western giants like Boeing and Airbus completely cut off Russia from parts, engineering, and maintenance support. We will uncover why Western planners thought Russia's commercial fleet would be grounded within months, how Moscow responded with a massive Soviet-style industrial pivot, and what this means for the future of global aviation. Stick around and watch till the very end, because the numbers and industrial realities we are going to look at will completely change how you view Western sanctions. Back when this all started, Boeing and Airbus cut off aircraft deliveries, spare parts, engineering help, and routine repair services, while strict export controls banned the shipping of high-tech aerospace parts. The thinking behind this was dead simple: take away the jets, the spare parts, and the technical support, and Russia's commercial aviation system will eventually stop working altogether. Western leaders made no secret about what they wanted to happen. In March 2022, the United States Department of Commerce came right out and said that cutting off parts, maintenance, and technical help would leave Russian-operated Boeing and Airbus planes effectively grounded. It was a super-direct admission that sanctions were not just meant to make life annoying for Russian airlines, but to downright crush the country's civil aviation strength. Fast forward 4 years, and while Russia's aviation industry has definitely taken some heavy hits, it is far from destroyed. Sure, factory schedules slipped, testing programs ran late, and airlines faced daily headaches trying to keep things running. That big bold prediction that Russian aviation was going to totally crash and burn. Yeah, that just did not happen. Instead, these restrictions triggered one of the largest self-reliance industrial pushes the country has seen since the end of the Soviet Union, bringing 3 major homegrown passenger jets toward mass production: the MC-21, the SJ-100, and the IL-114-300. Now, Taranov's analysis is crucial here because to understand where things stand today, we first have to look at how the original Western plan was designed to stop Russia from flying altogether. Before all these restrictions hit, Russian commercial flight was completely tied to Western factories and supply routes. Hundreds of American Boeing and European Airbus planes carried Russian passengers every single day, while Russia's own domestic plane programs relied heavily on foreign tech. The trade bans did not just stop new plane sales, though. They completely cut off spare parts, repair work, software updates, engineering manuals, official technical docs, and component safety certifications. Western leasing firms tried to snatch back their fleets, while factory engineers pulled out the tech support that local airlines needed to keep planes safe in the sky. A lot of foreign experts figured that even if Russian carriers kept flying for a few months on old stock, running out of official parts and maintenance would force most of their fleet to sit on the tarmac. At the exact same time, Russia's own domestic plane projects looked super vulnerable because they relied so heavily on imported engines, cockpit screens, composite materials, and computer controls. Stay tuned, because in just a moment we are going to look at how one specific regional jet was supposed to be the first major casualty of these bans, and how Moscow tried to flip the script. That brings us directly to the superjet, which Western officials were convinced was going to become an immediate casualty of the sanctions war. The original Sukhoi superjet was probably the ultimate example of this foreign dependence. Even though workers put the jet together inside Russia, a massive chunk of its parts came from abroad. Its SAM-146 engine was built alongside France's Safran, while its electronics, power systems, hydraulics, and cabin gear came straight out of European and American factories. When Western sanctions sliced those supply lines clean off, most outside observers figured the superjet was pretty much done for good. But instead of just throwing in the towel, Russian engineers decided to rebuild the entire plane almost completely from scratch. What came out of that redesign effort is the brand new SJ-100. Instead of using imported gear, the plane was fitted with locally made electronics, electrical power units, hydraulic setups, backup power systems, and dozens of key components. The old French-Russian engine setup was tossed out for the local PD-8 engine project, which got rushed into fast production because sanctions left zero other options. The SJ-100 turned into way more than just a tweaked regional plane. It became the poster child for Russia's push to break free from Western aerospace suppliers once and for all. Taranov's analysis is focused on identifying key inflection points, and this brings us to an even bigger target: why Western analysts fully expected the MC-21 program to die on the vine. The exact same doom predictions were slapped onto the MC-21 airliner. This jet was built from day one to be Russia's direct rival to the Boeing 737 MAX and the Airbus A320neo. But early prototypes were stacked with Western hardware. American company Pratt & Whitney supplied the engines, advanced wing materials came from the United States and Japan, and key onboard systems were imported right from Western vendors. When sanctions slammed the door on those high-tech components, plenty of Western analysts claimed the project had virtually zero chance of survival. But again, Russian manufacturing launched a massive, unprecedented effort to replace every single foreign part with local builds. Local factories developed homegrown carbon composites after foreign imports dried up completely. Russian firms localized the cockpit electronics, automatic flight controls, power boxes, and dozens of imported parts setups. Meanwhile, the original American engine option was swapped out for the locally built PD-14 turbofan. Now, stick around, because what happened during the latest flight tests of this aircraft reveals something surprising about where this industrial war is heading next. The newest model, the MC-21-310, recently completed another successful test flight using almost entirely Russian-made parts, showing just how far this local manufacturing drive has pushed forward. The importance of this plane goes way past basic technical stats. It stands as Russia's main bid to stop relying on imported narrow-body jets and replace them with a domestic workhorse that can carry the load for the nation's biggest airlines. Beyond big intercity airliners, short-haul regional flights were facing their own massive crisis that desperately needed a local fix. Sanctions highlighted a huge weak spot in Russia's regional travel network. For decades, airlines everywhere used Western regional turboprops like the ATR series for short flights between smaller cities. With sanctions blocking access to future Western planes, replacement parts, and maintenance backing, Moscow faced real trouble keeping remote towns connected across its massive landmass. The solution they settled on was the IL-114-300. Instead of depending on foreign short-haul planes, Russia speed-tracked the production of a homegrown turboprop powered by Russian engines and fitted with local equipment throughout. The IL-114-300 isn't just designed to fly routes to far-off villages. It is built to cut off future dependence on foreign makers in a market segment Western companies dominated for years. Here is where things get really interesting, because while building complete airplanes grabs all the big headlines, the real, gritty war was being fought over tiny spare parts behind closed doors. What most observers missed in this sanctions push was the massive battle taking place over everyday maintenance parts. Western regulators did not just stop at banning full planes. They tried to block Russia from getting the thousands of small repair pieces needed over a plane's multi-year lifetime. Landing gear assemblies, hydraulic lines, computer chips, compass sensors, software updates, and basic certified replacement parts suddenly became ridiculously hard to source. Boeing cut off all engineering help, repair support, technical advice, and spare parts orders. Airbus did the exact same thing right alongside them. Without those manufacturer service networks, almost everyone believed Russia's commercial airline fleet would slowly break down and stop flying. But Russia shifted gears into building up maintenance capabilities that had been mostly ignored for years. Domestic factories ramped up output for flight parts that used to be bought from overseas. Local repair hangars and overhaul hubs built up way more independence from Western technical crews. Companies spent heavily to make original replacement parts, certify local machine shops, and set up new legal pathways to sign off on locally produced aviation gear. So instead of just swapping out individual parts one by one, sanctions ended up forcing the creation of entire new industrial operations built solely to keep civil planes in the air. Keep watching, because as we look at the bigger picture, Taranov's analysis is clear. What started as a quick fix for broken parts has transformed into a total overhaul of the nation's entire industrial framework. Those 3 passenger jets are really just the visible surface of a much deeper, hidden industrial shift. Behind those planes sits a rapidly growing manufacturing network producing engines, carbon composites, flight computers, wiring, hydraulic pumps, software programs, and heavy frame parts that Russia used to import from Western factories. Companies that used to just put together imported parts kits are turning into full-fledged equipment makers on their own, while new suppliers are popping up across the country to fill the demand created by import substitution mandates. This industrial pivot stretches way beyond just assembling airplanes. It represents a concentrated effort to build an aviation sector capable of designing, building, and servicing passenger aircraft with far less reliance on Western hardware and technology. All of this brings us to the ultimate question of whether this strategy produced the outcome the West originally expected. Now, none of this means sanctions had zero impact or completely failed. Russia still wrestles with factory bottlenecks, safety certification delays, huge funding gaps, and the super tough challenge of scaling up to full factory output. Boeing and Airbus are still the undisputed giants of world aviation, with massive factory outputs and global service networks that nobody else comes close to matching. But that main goal announced during the opening months of the sanctions campaign, that Russian civil aviation would be grounded by taking away planes, parts, and service access, simply has not played out the way Western planners claimed it would. Instead of abandoning its commercial flight ambitions, Russia accelerated local development across every tier of civil aviation. The SJ-100 stepped in to replace a regional jet that used to depend on Western tech. The MC-21 was transformed into a localized narrow-body jet after foreign engines, wings, and systems were pulled. And the IL-114-300 became Moscow's answer to keeping regional routes open without buying foreign turboprops. What we are seeing today is not just 3 new jet models hitting the runway. It is the emergence of a far more self-reliant aerospace sector built under intense external pressure. Whether this domestic industry can ever compete on the global stage remains a huge open question, but one thing is already pretty clear: the campaign designed to ground Russian aviation ended up being the exact spark that rebuilt its homegrown aircraft industry. If you like this podcast, please like, subscribe and share.